Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Sylvia and this is Curupisa Crochet. Today I have a special project for you, which is a continuation of the previous one, Oma Lina's doily. If you just happened to bump into this video, I leave for you the link here to see what I'm talking about. Back there I showed you how to achieve this square shape to get a doily or a tablecloth with this shape. But now while I sip some of my matcha tea, I'll show you how to enlarge this square and how to turn it into a table runner, although with a bit of a twist, as you can see here. Before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you are looking for basic stitches and techniques for crochet and knitting. Many of the projects I present here are suitable for beginners or for people who are looking for stuff to sell. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so YouTube tells you every time I upload a new tutorial or a new vlog. Let's refresh some of the things that I showed you back in that previous tutorial about the Oma Lina's doily. I've worked in this square shape and we'll use it as a base, but we'll turn it a bit. And well, in that occasion I crocheted 8 rounds and a last one, a 9th one, to do the edging. But what you need is the basic square without that edging. As you can see here, I started another square, and when I reached that 8th round I stopped. As you can see here, I've already worked on the part that I added to get the shape for the table runner. From now on we'll work on 2 sides of a square, as you can see here, to get to half the length of the runner. So I'm no longer working in rounds but in rows, and only on top of 2 sides at a time. First on one side of a square, as you can see here, and then we'll pick the stitches on the other side, on those 2 sides that you can see here, and lengthen the table runner on this direction. Here you see on this side that I decided to stop after I worked on a series of color changes to get the effects of a rainbow, but you can lengthen the table runner until you get any size you would like. And as I told you, you might also want to, well, that's when you have to choose the total length of the table runner. But what happens when you have to decide what's the measure for the width of the table runner? In that case, you will see that this diagonal line that goes from one corner to the other will tell you how wide your table runner will be. So you can choose to make a table runner that is very thin or a table runner that is quite wide, and to get that measure you'll add rounds. And again, you'll add rows on one side or the other to get the length. Well, let's finally get working. Let me remind you that I've used for the basic square some sport weight yarn and a 4mm hook. Now let me start working on the other side of this basic square. I'll work in rows from this side. We'll skip this double crochet stitches and start on the first empty square of this kind of filet crochet. I will skip these double crochet stitches on this corner, and I'll crochet until I reach the last empty square on the other side, and so we'll get this straight line on the sides by doing this kind of decreases, as you can see. As I am going to change color every time I have to cut the yarn every row, I'll begin on the right and finish on the left side. Right now I have to switch the yarn color from turquoise to blue as I did on the other side, and for that I put a slip knot on my hook. But before, let me warn you something. I'll work, as I said, only in one direction. Every row will be a different color, so I choose to work from right to left. But if you choose to keep the same yarn color and not cut the yarn, I'll tell you when I reach the end of this row how to turn the work and to keep these line straight by decreasing in some way. So let's begin. As I said, slip knot. And now let me grab my project. The first double crochet stitch for this row will be on top of the fourth double crochet stitch of the group on the corner. Then 2 double crochet stitches on top of the chains. Every time I begin and finish a row will be with a full square, that's to say with these 4 stitches on top of these empty squares, you see. And also in this row I have to work by alternating empty squares and full squares, as I did with the basic square on the previous video. To keep the same pattern for the rows, I'll do the same. Back then I did 2 rounds of some kind of filet crochet stitch with empty squares and 2 rounds of alternative full squares and empty squares, as you can see. And I'm going to keep that kind of work. So in this row that I am starting right now, I have to work that kind of work of full and empty squares. So it will be 4 double crochet stitches on one space of 2 chains, and then 2 chains skipping the chain space of the previous row, and again 1 full square of 4 double crochet stitches. All of this must not be news to you, as we worked on this on the previous video of Oma Lina's doily. So I'll complete the work on this side, and when I reach the corner, I work as I did on the doily. I mean 4 double crochet stitches, 2 chains and 4 double crochet stitches. And you can see here that I have worked alternatively empty squares and full squares. Now let's go for the work of this corner. 2, 3 and 4 double crochet stitches, chain 2, and again 4 double crochet stitches on top of the same 2 chain stitches of the previous round. To complete the row, I have to continue on this side until I reach this last empty square or 2 chain space. Now I chain 2, skip those double crochet stitches and do 2 double crochet stitches on top of the chains and 1 last double crochet stitch. Skip these 2 chains by chaining 2, and again 4 double crochet stitches here. As I said many times, it's like working in filet crochet stitch. Well, now I'm reaching the end of this row, and as I will finish with this blue yarn, I'll cut the yarn and weave it in, but I'll show you how to turn the project to continue if you have the same yarn. So in this case, I chain 2 and work on the last 2 chain space. In this case, by doing 1 double crochet stitch on top of the double crochet stitch. If you choose to continue to work with the same skein and yarn color, I'll show you how to do it. In my case, I would do 4 double crochet stitches to finish this row, and I won't need to turn the work. But if you do, just do, this is one of the first possibilities that you can choose. To turn, you have to begin when turning on this first empty space. So you have to skip the first double crochet stitches. One of the methods I used for this is to work with slip stitches until I reach, for instance in this case, the 4th double crochet stitch, where I should begin this row, and on top of that stitch I would begin with a false double crochet stitch and continue to work as I should on the next row. In that case, I would begin with those 4 double crochet stitches on top of this first space and 2 double crochet. But before I continue, I'll show you the other method to complete this row, the previous one that I was finishing, and at the same time working on a way to turn without using the slip stitches. So you do the first double crochet stitch but leave it incomplete. Work on 2 unfinished double crochet stitches on top of the chains, and on the next double crochet stitch another double crochet stitch that you leave unfinished. And now you work as in Tunisian crochet. Grab the yarn over, grab the yarn and pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, again yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and one last that you will pull through 3 loops. So once you do that, you are in position to begin on top of that double crochet stitch where you should start the next row. So now you turn the work and do the first double crochet stitch of the row. I get confused every time. And work as expected for this row. In this case, it would be this full square by working double crochet stitches on the double crochet stitches and double crochet stitches on top of the chains. That sounded like a tongue twister. Well, let me unravel that part, and well, I'll cut the yarn and finish off this row. I'll settle that yarn. I'll weave it in like this. So when I reach that part of the row, now that I'll change my yarn color, it will be already woven in, and I won't need to do so at the end of the of all the rows and all the work, which is something that we don't enjoy very much. I mean, as people who like changing colors and joining squares and everything. So now I'll change my yarn color. I'll choose a purple one and begin again on the right. I should now again work by alternating empty and full squares. So every full square will go on top of the chain space, and every empty square will go on top of the full squares of the previous row. As I run out of purple sport weight yarn, as you see in this case, I'll grab this thinner yarn. It's a light fingering, I think, but I work it in 2 strands to get the right thickness. I'll skip the first 3 double crochet stitches and begin, as in the previous row, with 4 double crochet stitches. 1 on this first double crochet stitch, 2 double crochet stitches on top of the chains of this empty space, and 1 last double crochet stitch on top of the next double crochet stitch. And as I do it, I'll weave in this yarn tail, chain 2. Now I skip these 2 double crochet stitches and repeat the same work, as you can see here. And after that, it's only repeating the same kind of work. So now it's a full square of these 4 double crochet stitches and chain 2 until I reach the corner, and then the other side. Remember, it's only working on 2 sides. Cut the yarn and weave it in if you change color. Then we should work on these rows in pink, and instead of those empty and full squares, we'll work only with empty squares, empty spaces. But before I'll weave in this yarn tail again, as you see I do, and I repeat, I'll be very persistent with that idea. I don't like weaving in yarn ends at the end. So when you finish the piece, you finish the piece. You see, it really bothers me that when you are finishing your piece and you have to cut all those yarn tails and everything, that gets me quite annoyed. And when I'm working on the piece and I see some yarn ends, as in this case, I prefer to cut them already all together and then finish the last stitch and finish the piece. Well, you will repeat the series of colors if you change them, or work until you reach the total length of the piece. For me, the next row would be in pink, but it will be one row where I'll work with these stitches that are filet crochet like. So the first thing you do on this row again is double crochet stitch on top of the fourth double crochet stitch of the previous row. And with these you'll have a nice zigzaggy edge. 2 double crochet stitches on top of the next 2 chains, and 1 double crochet stitch on top of the next double crochet. And now you'll work only empty spaces, so your project will grow very fast. Let me get this. I'm a bit obsessed with those yarn ends. So you'll chain 2, skip those 2 double crochet stitches and work 1 double crochet stitch on the fourth one, chain 2, skip those 2 chains and double crochet on the next double crochet, and so on again. Chain 2, skip those 2 double crochet stitches, and on the next do a double crochet stitch, and go on like this until you reach the corner where you will work again 4 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and 4 double crochet stitches. Well, now you can see I've worked my magic and almost finished my piece. I've added some rows by repeating those rainbow series twice, and already did this edge that I've worked on the previous video about the Oma Lina's doily, and I'll link it up here again, but I'll show you anyway right now. That's the only thing I have left to do on this piece. So I decided to finish with blue yarn that we used to work the edge around the square on that other video. So we begin for these. We'll only work on these 2 sides again, not around all the piece. And for that again, I'll start with a slip knot on top of the hook, and we'll skip the first 3 double crochet stitches and fill this space. Double crochet on top of the 4th double crochet stitch, then 2 double crochet stitches on top of these 2 chains, I have bandages because I was bitten by a dog some days ago. So now you'll see that instead of the 2 chains that we've been working previously, we chain 5, and on the 4th chain from the hook work 1 double crochet stitch, another one on the 5th chain, and on top of this double crochet stitch of the group of the row, do another double crochet stitch. Skip those 2 double crochet stitches and again fill this empty space that's next with 2 double crochet stitches. Maybe this last row will go on top of one of these rows that you worked with filet crochet stitch with empty spaces. It's the same kind of work. You'll have 1 empty space filled with these 4 double crochet stitches, and then skip another empty space, as in this case. So you continue with this kind of work, and when you reach the corner, you again will work 4 double crochet stitches, and instead of the 2 chains work like this, as I showed you. And you can see here on the other side that I did it. I replaced the 2 chains with this kind of bumpy arch worked with double crochet stitches. So also in this part of the edge on the corner you'll get the same kind of shape. Well, let me continue with this row so I get my piece finished. Meanwhile, I invite you again to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any tutorials that are coming this year. There are many projects I have for the channel. Also, it gives me great joy if you like my tutorial and give me a thumbs up and share the video with other people and link back here, and please leave a comment. I love reading your comments and answer right away when I see YouTube notifies me you have left a message. Now I'll take another sip of my mate tea and say bye bye to you, and we'll see you next time.